Texas billionaire Allen Stanford told 30,000 investors their money was in safe, liquid, world-class investments. At trial, prosecutors proved that was true for only about 10 to 15% of it. The rest paid old investors and funded his private empire. By 2008, his bank owed depositors more than $8 billion. Investigators later could not find 92% of it. One property he bought for $63 million, he valued on his books at $3.1 billion. No appraisal, no improvements. So how does a man sell $8 billion of a lie and get knighted while he does it? This is the story of Sir Allen Stanford, the safe investment that was never there. To understand how $8 billion vanishes, you first have to see the man people trusted with it. Allen Stanford was Texas big, private jets, a fleet of them, mansions, a castle in Florida. He loved cricket, so he did not just sponsor a match, he built one. The Stanford 2020, a winner-takes-all game with a $20 million prize, the richest in the sport. The tiny island of Antigua made him a knight. To much of the world, he became Sir Allen. And at the center of the empire sat a bank, the Stanford International Bank. It was not in New York or London. It was offshore in Antigua, a 2-hour flight from Miami. That distance was not a detail, it was the whole design. Because the further your money travels, the harder it is to check what happens to it. And what the bank was selling sounded like the most boring, safe product in finance. It sold certificates of deposit, CD, the kind your grandparents used. You hand the bank your money for a fixed term, and it pays you a fixed, guaranteed rate. It is supposed to be the opposite of gambling. Slow, dull, certain. But Stanford's CDs paid more, consistently more than any American bank would offer. The pitch was simple. Same safety as a normal bank, but a better return because we invest smarter from a quiet island with no distractions. And the returns were beautiful. A smooth line climbing year after year, barely a wobble even when markets crashed. That smoothness was the tell. Real safe investments do not glide through a crisis untouched. A truly safe, liquid portfolio moves with the market. Stanford's never seemed to. Which raises the only question that mattered. Where was the money actually going? The brochures were reassuring. Your money, they said, sat in a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and metals. Managed by more than 20 analysts, monitored around the clock, liquid enough to pull out any time. That was the promise printed on $8 billion of deposits. Here is what prosecutors showed the jury years later. That advertised strategy, the careful global portfolio, covered only about 10 to 15% of the money. So where was the other 85%? A large part of it had quietly left the bank as personal loans to one borrower, Allen Stanford himself. Billions flowed into his private companies. Airlines, real estate, Caribbean ventures that lost money. The depositors thought they owned a slice of a safe global fund. They actually owned Allen Stanford's losing bets. And a machine like that only survives on one condition. It can never stop taking in new money. Because the money to pay the old investors did not come from clever trading. It came from the next investors walking through the door. When someone cashed in their CD, they were not paid from profits. They were paid with a new depositor's savings. That is the definition of a Ponzi scheme. New money pretending to be returns. But Stanford's version had a disguise Madoff never bothered with. Bernie Madoff ran his fraud on paper. No real trades, no real business, just statements. Stanford had a real bank, real buildings, real cricket stadiums, real airplanes. The empire you could see made the hole you could not see feel impossible. But by 2008, the hole was enormous, and it needed to be hidden on the books. So Stanford invented an asset out of thin air. In 2008, the bank needed to show regulators it was solid. Its assets had to be worth more than what it owed. They were not, so the balance sheet got some help. Stanford had bought a piece of land for $63.5 million. Within months, it appeared on the bank's books at a new value, $3.1 billion, a 5,000% increase in months on a piece of land. There had been no independent appraisal, no new construction, no reason at all. That single invented number filled roughly a quarter of the bank's entire balance sheet. On paper, the bank was healthy again. In reality, the healthiest asset it owned was a lie about a field. A lie that big should have been caught. There were regulators whose entire job was to catch it. The bank was in Antigua, so the regulator was Antigua's own financial authority. At the top of it sat a man named Leroy King. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, King was on the payroll. Prosecutors said Stanford bribed him to keep the regulator's hands off the bank. When American investigators sent questions about Stanford, King is said to have passed them straight to Stanford first. The watchdog was not asleep, it had been bought. And this is the part that should sound familiar. In our last file, Wirecard, Germany's own regulator, turned its weapons on the journalists instead of the fraud. Different country, different scheme, same lesson. The alarm only works if someone is willing to pull it. For 20 years, nobody did, until the whole market ran out of money at once. In December 2008, a different fraud collapsed on the other side of the world. Bernie Madoff was arrested. Suddenly, every investor on Earth had the same thought. Is my money actually there? And they all reached for it at the same time. For a Ponzi scheme, that is the end. Stanford's engine ran on new deposits, and new deposits had stopped. Redemptions poured in. There was no smooth global portfolio to sell. There was a field and a pile of losing companies. So Stanford tried one last move. He told everyone he had personally injected new money to shore up the bank. $741 million of fresh capital, he claimed. It was a lie. That capital did not exist either. By early 2009, the American regulators were done waiting. On the 17th of February 2009, the SEC moved in, halted the sale of the CDs and froze the assets. 30,000 investors across more than 100 countries reached for their safe, liquid savings and found a locked door. When the receivers finally opened the books, the scale was staggering. The bank had told the world it held around $8 billion in assets. Investigators could not account for 92% of it. In total, prosecutors put the fraud at more than $7 billion, built over roughly 20 years. In March 2012, a jury in Houston found Allen Stanford guilty on 13 of 14 counts. The judge sentenced him to 110 years in federal prison. The court also ordered a personal judgment of $5.9 billion. But here is the cruel ending for the investors. Unlike the Madoff case where much of the money was clawed back, Stanford's had mostly been spent. The Jets, the cricket, the losing bets. Most depositors got back pennies on the dollar, years later, if anything at all. And that is the trap at the heart of this story. The product Stanford sold was never really a certificate of deposit. It was the feeling of safety. A knighthood, a cricket empire, a smooth line on a chart, and a bank on a sunny island most people would never visit. Everyone checked the feeling. Almost nobody checked whether the money was actually there. Because the next person who sold that same feeling did not even bother with a bank. She sold a coin that did not exist. Next file, the Crypto Queen.